Well, Alberta Premier Jason Kenney has announced that the Calgary Stampede is set to take center stage later in this summer. Unfortunately for Chuckwagon fans, there will be no Rangeland Derby Chuckwagon Racing this upcoming year. Joining me today to break this down is the man with many hats, Greg Buchanan. Greg, thanks for taking this time and joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I wish we'd be talking about a Calgary Stampede that would look like it did 3 years ago, but we're not going to. So.
Now, I guess, Greg, just, starting things off, jumping into it here, I guess just why did the Calgary Stampede come up with this decision?
Okay, well, before we jump into it, I just want to tell people that I'm the vice president of the CPCA for 5 years. I'm also host and producer of the CPCA radio network for 18 years. So this is coming from a guy that's been around the sport for a while. I think it blindsided a lot of people. So the announcement comes down last week, and it comes basically 24 hours removed from Premier Kenney saying the Calgary Stampede, and he said the Calgary Stampede will be open up for business. Not so fast. The Calgary Stampede then came out the next day and told all the drivers involved, the 27 drivers involved for the July show, there won't be a Rangeland Derby. Now, the Calgary Stampede cited not enough race nights for the horses. Typically, the WPCA and the CPCA season would start in June, late May, and they would have 4 to 5 shows before they get to the Calgary Stampede, and every show is roughly 4 or 5 nights. So enough race nights in for those horses to be ready for the Calgary Stampede. With no shows for the WPCA, at least right now, Ponoka could be a show that they will have in the early part of July. As for the CPCA, 2 shows before the Calgary Stampede. Calgary Stampede just thought, and they kind of put it to the reality of hockey. You wouldn't ask hockey players to play a preseason games and then jump into the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I understand where they're coming, their logics from that. But if you talk to any Chuckwagon driver, they start training for the season in May. So those horses that they're talking about that's not getting a lot of track time, they're getting track time almost every day or every second day for the last number of months. And those Chuckwagon drivers know more about their horses than anybody. So for the Calgary Stampede to know more about the welfare of the horses than the drivers themselves, I think that's doing a disservice.
Well, Greg, and piggybacking onto your point there, when you talk about hockey, well, there's a guy right now in the Stanley Cup playoffs named Nikita Kucherov, who just missed an entire season and is now hopping back into his sport. These professional athletes, they train for this, they train to play their sport and excel at it. So I don't know if that quite is an argument. Greg, as well, a Stampede spokesperson earlier, or rather late last week, said it would be inappropriate to go from spring training to a high stakes championship, such as the Calgary Stampede there. So up in the air whether or not that is actually correct or not. Greg, moving forward, while it is unfortunate, no Chuck Wagons at the Calgary Stampede, what's the future looking like for the CPCA here?
The CPCA and in general for the sport now, doing the radio, and I interviewed Buddy Bensmiller a number of years ago, and this is kind of going back to the Calgary Stampede and about the future of the sport. And I asked him, are you concerned about the future of the sport? And here's Buddy, who's a legendary driver. You don't even have to know Chuckwagon Racing to hear the name Buddy Bensmiller. And Buddy said, we're too reliant on one show, and that is the Calgary Stampede. As soon as they pull that away from us, and honestly, this has been maybe coming for a while, that the Calgary Stampede is taking a second look at the Rangeland Derby. So when you take that away, what do you have? With that said, the CPCA was looking at it that we were reduced down to 4 drivers this July. We don't know what 2022 is going to look like. And they were going to go forward, the Calgary Stampede was, without the CPCA going forward. So we had to come up with an alternative plan and a show that gives options to drivers that can't race at the Calgary Stampede, not just CPCA, but the WPCA. So we came up with the North American Chuckwagon Championship, which will be 9 days of racing here in Lloydminster, July the 9th, moving forward and through the fair. And it is going to put Lloydminster and Chuckwagon Racing under the spotlight for 9 days here. And I know when the news came down Thursday and how quickly it spread across the Chuckwagon sport, wow, this is going to be quite the show. There's going to be Calgary Stampede champions there. There is going to be a ton of fans, and this is going to be the real big party of the summer because we've all been sitting inside for so long that I think we're looking for something. So there's positivity from the negativity right now, and we're hoping that North American Championship is going to be exactly that.
And Greg, it's been nearly 2 years since, the organization and these drivers have been a part of Chuckwagon Racing, that finals here in Lloydminster just about 2 years ago at the end of August there. So I think it's pretty safe to say that they're excited to get back on the track. No?
Oh, definitely. I think the thing is about it is we know, we fans know, the sponsors know, the drivers know what's going on behind the scenes. The horses don't. The horses know this. It's this time of year. I'm supposed to be out at the track. I'm supposed to be running because that's what I'm here for. And they're not. They haven't been. And so they miss competing. And those horses, they're dying to get back at it. And June the 24th is the start of the CPCA Pro Tour. It's going to be in North Battleford, and then following that, 5 days of racing at Onion Lake, and then here for the North American Championship. So the CPCA is looking forward to about 2.5 months of solid racing.
And before all of that gets underway, first things first, there is the TARP auction June 8th, so early next week there. Greg, thank you very much for taking this time and joining me. It should be exciting with this season moving forward.
Thanks, Evan.